Hello, and welcome to the Aftershow. My name is Nicholas Lamar Soutter, and thank you all for joining us. So we have someone has already come into the room, and you just mute for 1 second, and we'll get to that. So thank you for joining us. I'm just going to hit. Yesterday there was the shooting of Judge Esther Salas of North Brunswick, New Jersey. She was a federal court judge. She still is. It was an attempted assassination. Her son was killed. Her husband is in critical condition. It looks also like the White House has now reversed position and is strongly encouraging masks. Ostensibly, this has nothing to do with what's actually important or with reality, but with falling poll numbers. So there's a few other things going on, but I think what we'd really like to do is cover today sort of what we covered yesterday. We didn't get a chance to really hear from our audience or for other people. I've been in a few discussions. Some people have brought up some very interesting points that I'd like to discuss. We've had a few people who it's getting late, especially on the other side of the world. So we're going to be missing a few of the people that we had hoped could join us, but I am going to talk about what their positions and observations were, and hopefully frame it in such a way that I'm not making a complete ass of them. May make an ass of myself, but we call that Tuesday. So in the meantime, we do have already someone in the Hangout. So the link to the Hangout is in the Discord, and it's in the description here. Click on that. You can also call in. We've had some troubles. Certain cell phones, it looks like, can't get in. We'll take a look at that. But until then, let me open up the room here, and let's see. We have Dave. Dave, how you doing? Hopefully everyone can hear you. We'll see. You can unmute now and let us know how you're doing. Or you can stay muted. I greatly prefer conversations where I am the only one talking. So if you would like to stay muted, please, by all means, do so. Shoot, yes, unfortunately I can. I can also hear the broadcast in the background, so you're gonna have to, I think, either mute the broadcast or oh, okay. And I think I may know why that is. Is everyone else having difficulty hearing me in the app? That I can fix that. It's going to take a minute. All right. Well, joy. I do know why that is, so I will get on that right now. Actually, I have two theories as to why that is. On our old system, we had to mute one of the rooms in which we did this in order for this to work properly. So I think I accidentally activated the muted room. The other thing I could do, well, there's any number of solutions to this. So I do apologize. So you guys will be behind the discussion, at least for just a second. But let me, Dave, you're the first one here. So once you catch up to the audio in real time, and the sound, the sound should be on within about a minute or two. So I'll work on that. But why don't you tell us, why you came in and what you had to say and what you've seen. Okay, so he's if he doesn't unmute, we could go with Sammy because you can. All right. Well, I can give him a minute for his audio to catch up. Yeah. So give me a sec. I know how to fix that, so I'm gonna need a minute here. At least I hope I know how to fix it. Yes. There's always got to be something, huh? I apologize for that. That should be fixed momentarily, I think. All right, are you guys able to hear me now? That would be a no. Well, if one of you wants to just start talking without me for a minute, this is going to take a minute to fix. I do apologize, but you guys can start on why you're here and what you thought of yesterday's show, and I will work on the volume as we do that. Yeah, I can hear you. So why don't you? So Sammy, I assume you saw yesterday's show. What did you think? Okay, I apologize. No, I. Oh, there you are. Please. I really hope that's not. Oh Jesus, I hope that's not it. Oh dear. Okay, okay, okay. Who let Sammy in the room? Oh dear Lord. I do not like any of you. This may do it. Let's see if this works. Hey, what do you know? There was a 50-50. All right. All right. Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, I sincerely apologize for that. Tested everything except, of course, that. So, but it looks like we're okay. So, 4 more years. What I think we need to do. We need to have a serious discussion about Sammy and that 4 more years comment because I'm offended. And that was you. Okay, even better. You don't work for us. So, there's really no cost to me if you're just booted. So, no, no, not in the slightest. I no. Oh shit. Well, oh, wow. Shots fired. Wow. Okay. 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 This got personal. This got personal really quick. What did? Oh dear Lord. Okay. Oh, and they are not hearing the guests on YouTube, which is a disappointment because this has been already a very fascinating discussion. Yeah. Okay. So, I didn't understand what he was saying earlier. So, uh, let me deal with that. I have no idea why the guests aren't coming through. One or two ways, I suppose, to deal with that. Sorry, guys, I missed. Yes, it's unfortunately. Well, no. Sammy questioned my production values, and the fact that we don't have the sound working correctly, notwithstanding, I have no idea what he's talking about, and was really quite offended. Um, that sounds about right. I think we are correct on that. So this second sound issue now may take a little longer to resolve. I have um, yeah, and Coessa, of course, is giving me a. I think I have a feeling this is going to be one of those shows that is going to be a problem for me. I have a feeling. So, but yeah, we are having there's wow. I'm starting to feel like Ethan, who's always getting his own. audio setting, audio difficulties. So let me get this. No, this is okay. So this is completely refusing to do the audio. I do have a workaround. It was going to probably take just 1 second because it was not designed to do this. So, um, yeah, Talon. Actually, I'm going to tell you honestly, guys. If you heard half of the shit these people were saying about me, actually, not about me. They were being offensive to Mother Teresa, and they were attacking. Yeah, yeah, I agree. Mother Teresa was not. I was hoping you didn't know that. Okay. Uh, all right. This should fix it. It will take only one more minute. Yeah, yeah. I have some objections to Mother Teresa, and right now everyone in the live chat is making fun of. There is another way to. I mean, we could switch rooms to do the sound, but then everybody's got to go over this. I will confess to being at a loss as to why we are having sound issues on this, and I do have one alternative, but it won't let me do that either. So you'll all have to give me a minute. Normally, I'd have you guys talk to just essentially play for time, but that's not going to work because nobody can hear you. And while admittedly I do like being able to control both sides of the conversation, it honestly isn't good for ratings. We're not going. We're not. My producer is a spectacular producer. He's one of the. He is the best producer. He knows all the best productions. Um, all right, this is really going to give me a hard time now, isn't it? Well, I think one thing we can do is we can start with. Okay, I want to take off the $400 suit. You guys can at least type in the Discord for now, and I think we can have a discussion. I think I accidentally may have kicked off a discussion about Mother Teresa. Uh, but the audio is being immensely stubborn right now, and I honestly don't know why. So I've got a little button that activates the audio specifically for that channel, and it'll do nothing when I click on it. Won't blow, won't click, won't do anything. Uh, I'm really glad they can't hear you. I mean, I am just so glad they can't hear you at the present moment. I'm not. This is not incentivizing me to fix the sound. I'm just saying. That's true. I'm behaving very much like a liberal, and just like you have to use my language. You have to use the terms as I use them, or else you're gone. All right. So yes, you could go into the Discord VC. That's actually a really good idea. Um, Getting this isn't prepared to the other interface is ready for the VC. This one is not, but I think that's fixable. I think that's fixable pretty easily. So what I think we're going to do is, yep, I think we should switch to the Discord VC. Let me just get the Discord up and running real quick and make sure that we've got it. So I'm going to go into the on-air room. It's the room with the red dot. And my suspicion is that's going to work. So let me connect the audio into that room. Not just yet. Don't head over just yet. Although actually, honestly, if it, I want to make sure I can get it. Um, and I'm pretty sure I can, but this hasn't been set up to. Um, this wasn't actually. So one of the annoying things about this is that it needs to. You have to reset everything up for different layouts, and this one was not set up yet for connecting the voice chat to, and yeah, and the only connection that it looks like it's going to let me make right away, of course, we really can't. Oh, I've got one more idea. Okay, let's just see. All right, and that one's not going to allow audio either. Oh dear Lord. So yeah, just restart, or I should switch. I should go from. I mean, frankly, the Doritos have been a problem, and I should probably switch to Frito Lay or something that's a bit, less of a name brand, but still pretty good. So that's my thought. Exactly. Now, so this isn't picking up. So for whatever reason, this actually isn't picking up the audio from the Discord either. So at this point, I'm not entirely sure how. There's clearly a problem. I could try. Not going to hit the like button until it's fixed. Honestly, I got to tell you, I completely concur with that. This is not our best show. I'm going to admit something that I was never going to tell anybody, and I promised I wasn't going to say this, but we've asked Tony Designs to start producing for us, and honestly, I think clearly you can see the results. And I mean, I like the guy. I'll be honest. I actually really kind of do like the guy, kind of. But this kind of thing is just. So I'm going to take a second to try to figure out a way to try to get this to work. I mean, the sound isn't even showing up on the panel, which is a little odd. And my guess is it's a really easy fix that I am being completely oblivious to. That's usually no comments from the peanut. Whoever's about to talk, I hear you. I hear you about to say. Don't say anything. Don't say anything. I didn't ask your opinion. No, no. I was talking about you. Oh dear Lord. Okay, so to answer the first question, well, I'm not even going to dignify that with a response. All I have to say is I think everybody in the In Time live chat at this point should hit the like button and they should subscribe. And the reason is because I have done an immense service not exposing them to the comments you, sir, are making. So I think, frankly, they owe me one. I've taken a bullet. I have to listen to this. But Talon, I'm disappointed. The other question was, on the audio inputs, and we have someone else coming in. we're gonna have a lot of people coming in. We're gonna have half the people not understanding what the other half are saying. But oh, it's Xandering. So now I'm really glad the sound doesn't work. Uh, I do think I have an idea how to fix this problem, but it requires software that I do not have. So the only other possibility is to do a Skype call. That we can do. I don't know if you guys have Skype, but that should work. In fact, I'm almost certain that will work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to warm up the Skype system. I do apologize for all of this. This is what we get for starting on time. We actually were on time today, and the net result is something else had to go wrong. So the Skype address, and I know not everybody has Skype, but this I know we do this regularly, and this should work just fine. And I'm gonna double check the Skype address again. And I genuinely I do apologize. I'm sorry. This is no fun for anybody, least of all for me because I'm stuck here with you guys. I'm sorry. Did I say that aloud? Is my mic working? Ah, I love you all. I love all my audience. I would never mock anybody. Yeah, thanks, Xander. Actually, Xander, do you still have you should still have actually the Skype address. I think you do. Did we connected through Skype last time? I think it's admin@intimeshow.com. So anyone who wants to hit that one, admin@intimeshow.com. Once I have somebody in the room, I'll activate it and we will do the room through Skype. I do sincerely apologize. Um, anyone who well, so here's what it is. Anyone who wants to be in the show, if you're looking to say something positive and talk about what a wonderful human being I am, the address is admin@intimeshow.com. If you're going to be snarky and give me a hard time, we're very interested in hearing what you have to say. The address is getlost@intimeshow.com. You'll have to wait a few minutes, but just please go to that address. You'll be fine. All right. So we got our first thank you is Andring. Yep, I can. You may not be able to hear me because we actually haven't connected, of course, the audio. But what I'm going to do now is switch it over. And I'd like everyone to understand something. And I'm not trying to, I just want everybody to understand that I'm using vMix, which is a spectacular software. I like it a lot. It's very powerful. But for the record, I started using vMix about 2.5 or 3 weeks ago. This is only my third week actually using it, and it is indeed a very complicated software. So I'm going to use that as my kind of like, please forgive me, and we'll pretend like everything's going perfectly well. Instead, we'll give Nick a little bit of a break because this is only my third week using software I've never used before. So, with that said, I have now connected the what I believe to be the proper thing. So, Xandering, you should be up and people should be able to hear you.
Ooh, I'm being warned.
Oh, dear
You are
Lord.
using a device that could record or broadcast this call.
I would never record or broadcast you, Xandering. Everything you say here is in private. Of course you can't hear anything. Why would you be able to hear anything? Okay, you literally cannot hear anything. I have no idea why that would be. I'll take another stab at fixing that. So, yeah, I said somebody asked for the address. It's admin@intimeshow.com. Now, this, of course, says that the audio is going through to him just fine. Actually, I have a suspicion as to maybe why he can't hear it. That is odd because he connected just a couple days ago this way, and everything was perfectly fine. It does. I mean, the other alternative, of course, is I restart. But if I do that, the whole show just gets tanked. Which, to be fair, it's pretty close to that already. Let me. So Xandring cannot hear me. He is set up on the NDI camera. The sound should be so. Okay, so we now have several people in the room. It looks like they can't hear. The other alternative is, let me try one other thing. And everyone gets to watch. So I'm going to start a new series, and this is just I think
Very lonely in here.
I'm going to start a new series. It's how to produce a YouTube show badly, and I think it's going to be a successful. I think I'm qualified to discuss that. Um, okay. You know what? I didn't ask you. I no, I did. I truly did not ask for your opinion. I would. No, no, no. Yep. Oh, oh, okay. Wow. Talk about below the belt. Talk. Holy. Wow. Okay. Okay. Yeah. No. This is why you're never going to be invited to these things again. I appreciate the timestamps. You're more than welcome to keep doing that. Um, but I think we should just leave it there. All right. So I don't know if Xander can hear me at this point. If he can't, I'm running out of ways to fix it. Um, what we've got.
I
Oh
can
dear Lord.
hear you on YouTube.
Okay, well, perfect. Well, so we'll have a conversation with a 7-second delay. That's a great idea. I know what the problem is on this one, which was I was not
Yep.
prepared. I was not
And I'll hear
prepared.
myself right in the middle, interrupting myself.
I hate that. Oh God, that no, I can't function that way. Um, I know what the problem is here, which is this input. So we have a system to bring in people through Skype. The problem with the system is it requires other software running on the side, and I did not um, activate that software because I was not anticipating doing this. So we're going to bring this up. This will be up in just 1 second. And then when it is, hopefully you'll be able to hear me on the thing. But the good news is they can hear you in the live chat. So uh, we are, so we're for every 2 problems we fix, we're creating another one. Statistically speaking, we will eventually get to the end. I'm just not entirely sure when. Um,
Gotta love technology.
yeah. Okay. Well, all right. So this says the sound is in fact coming through. So if you still can't hear me on that channel, that just means that probably every now and then when the system restarts, it just changes the audio mic. Nope, this says the audio mic is correct. Microphone is
I
correct.
can hear you in Skype.
You can hear me in Skype now.
Yes, I just realized why I was getting the echo. It's because I was watching YouTube at the same time, so I was getting both audio feeds. So I closed out YouTube, and I can actually hear you fine. I see everything. I see the thing on Skype and everything. So,
Brought to
of
you
course, I
by
don't
the
know if I'm
U.S.
talking
government.
over other people because I can't hear anyone else.
Everybody, we're doing the Skype. The Skype works. We have a Xandering. We have people in that can hear. We are switching to Skype, ladies and gentlemen. The sound works. The Skype address is admin@intimeshow.com. Come on in and join us. I think we did have somebody else try to join the call, but I was distracted by a lot of people saying really nasty things to me about me, questioning my parental heritage, questioning my integrity, questioning my ability to produce, and questioning my ability to do just about anything else.
Well, they haven't questioned your ability to exist yet, so at least there's that.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. My name is Nicholas Lamar Soutter. Welcome to the final episode of In Time. I'm not doing this shit anymore. I don't get paid enough for this. Yes, I could talk to you. You realize let me put in the into the chat so that you guys can see the address for Skype is. That's the address. So go to Skype. It'll work on your phone. It'll work on anything. Come on in. and yeah, make fun of my production. But you were going to say something. I mean, but the people only hear, Dave, only like my half of the conversation. Which actually you've been trolling me. So yeah, why don't you go right ahead? Don't bother switching to Skype. I don't think I want anyone to hear this. Oh, you're going to troll. Great. So we have, without any crystal balls, is here. Good to see you. Good to see Native Atheist. Good to see Michael. Not as good to see Michael because he's been giving me a hard time. Doorknob Head, everybody. So we have a lot to actually genuinely discuss, and I'm glad Azandering is here because he is a conservative, and you know we've made some serious progress in curing him of that disease. And by progress I mean, well, we haven't gotten anywhere technically, I suppose, but you know, he listens, which is good. So he just disagrees with everything, which is a real fucking pain in the ass, especially since he actually knows what he's talking about. So he's here. We're going to discuss these ostensive. I mean, I hesitate to call them kidnappings. They're very close to kidnappings, and if there is no probable cause, as I suspect, these are kidnappings. These are kidnappings if there's no probable cause. I suspect there isn't any. There certainly isn't any paperwork to show whether or not there's probable cause. I don't think I'm prepared to call them kidnappings yet, but boy, are they fucking close. So, and we've got, I think I missed a call from, so let me, I'm sorry, there we go. It's difficult for some reason. This doesn't always show on my thing, so if I missed the call the first time, please do try again. Oh, I got a call coming in, so let's get you in. All right, we've got like 2 or 3 people calling, and it looks like they didn't. The response time on this is awfully slow. Tell me this isn't a government operation, please. So keep trying if you don't get in right away. I've got a couple who have tried, and now it's booted me from that end of this. Oh, here we go. Boom, boom. So that should be another 2 people in the call. So I think we're starting to get this under control. So the other person I wanted to get in was Landon is calling. Oh, please tell me it's not Landon. Please tell me it's not. I'm having a hard enough time already. Anybody but Landon. Okay, there you go. Actually, what I really should do is I could get the audio for that into my headset so I know when people are calling. All right, so we now have a number of people in the call. 5. I am hearing myself, so somebody's left their mic open with the show in the back. Presumably no need to do that now since we've actually fixed the audio problem. So where are we? Well, yeah, we did a show. I think it was pretty intense. There are a couple people. I wanted to get Agrippa in here to talk. He is actually very well educated he knows a lot about topics like this. He brought up some concerns that I would like to bring up to sort of the people who are here, and we'll discuss all that in a little bit. But until then, who here would like to start? The topic really is extrajudicial napping. Yeah, I think everybody knows, if you saw the show yesterday, I think a line has been crossed that is, in my view, genuinely terrifying. And by the way, I'm going to close the Google room because that's obviously not working. I do apologize for that. I'm sorry. Just, we thought Tony could handle it, and obviously he didn't quite get everything right, but we still like the guy. So where do we stand? What do we think? I mean, this is I'll admit this is the first time I think really in the entire Trump administration that I've been really, actually, I think scared may actually be the word for it. And I've been asked, so the address is admin@intimeshow.com, and that is on Skype and call, and we will bring you into the show. So it's Andrew. I think you're up. I know there's a few other people who are waiting, but they are being really mean to me. So I'm going to bench them for a little while.
You're going to what? I'm screwing with my audio settings here to try and figure out. You sound a little choppy to me, so I'm just trying to figure out.
I was going to say I was going to bench them for a little while because they were all really mean to me, and my fifis are hurt. They hurt my fifis. You have no idea what these people were saying.
It sounds a bit choppy on my side, too.
All right. I have one thing that may fix that. So let me take a look at that. It may be that with so many people in the call, it may be we're bumping into a bandwidth issue. So there's a couple of ways to fix that. I will get on it. But Xandering, we can hear you loud and clear. So why don't you tell me your thoughts on this?
I think I heard everything you just said. Uh, this is the after show for the one you did yesterday, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that's this is the doom and gloom and the thing that all of the whack nuts people out in the boondocks with hundreds of thousands of rounds of ammunition and guns out the ass have warned everybody that the government would start doing. So hold on to your asses, because now we're all going tyranny and everybody's going to have to rise up. How you feeling about owning AR-15s now, huh?
14s.
First of all, I prefer the 14. It's
Yes,
just
they are 14.
yeah. Second of all, please tell me you're not talking about insurrection on my YouTube channel. I'm just
No, never.
I'd like to remind
I would
people
never
that
do
this is
something like that.
this is why we have the disclaimer at the front of the show. People make fun of me for that disclaimer. They're like, "Do you really need that disclaimer?" Yes, I've had on Xandering more than once. I learned the first time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not
Okay.
insurrection. They shoot first, right? That's how it
Yeah,
works.
that's usually the argument that's made. That's true, but I really do kind of regret that. I think that he's right in the sense that this is actually the scenario that I hadn't envisioned anything like this, but here we are in roughly the scenario that they were saying is the problem. So, um,
Yeah, it's disturbing as hell. I mean, you never want to hear about your government just sending in secret police, unidentified. You have no idea who they are. They just walk up and start taking people, and you don't know who they are. You don't know where they've been taken, and you don't know why they've been taken. People roll up and take people away, and thank God we were able to see them all again, and thank God we had several of this on camera. This is not an okay thing. I mean, this will disintegrate even the perception of law and order. You can't have a government just going out and taking people off the streets without any due process whatsoever.
yeah,
That's how democracies fail. That's how
and
republics
we wouldn't
fail.
have known. We wouldn't have known if people hadn't recorded this. I mean, holy shit! There's no paperwork. There's no there's nothing. Sorry, I cut somebody off, I think.
Can I play devil's advocate to that?
Are you ever not going to? I mean, you can just. I mean, if you plan on not playing,
no,
okay.
because I'm hypercritical on everything.
I noticed that. Thanks. It's been a pleasure knowing you. Why don't you don't even bother with the preamble and just tell us? Just start a fight.
All right, so the video that you showed yesterday, where it was the guy in the biker helmet or whatever it was, the two arresting officers or whatever you want to call them saw the camera. There's no way they didn't see the camera. Why would they leave the evidence? Why not take that, and then the right could start a story of, you see how crazy these lefties are, or you see how crazy these protesters are. They're claiming we're taking them, and that's not what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't say anything though.
They didn't take the camera. That's actually, you're right, because the camera was pretty obvious. I mean, it's just like they're recording it. But they're all new to this. You know what I mean? This is their first time, really. I mean, this started, and we don't know how many there are. There was a number that there were 16 arrests or detentions, but it was very unclear to me reading this whether they meant 16 using this method or 16 total. But there's two that we know about. But the first of the two that we know about were warned that people had already been kidnapped and taken off the streets by this roving band on vans. So it seems to me plausible that at least there's somewhere between 5 and 10 at a minimum. We don't know. People are still collecting this data, and there's even more shit happening because America. So, yeah. Anyone else want to say something cheery?
But they didn't identify themselves. They didn't tell him that he was being detained. They didn't tell him anything. They just walked up, grabbed him, walked away. They didn't talk to anybody. They responded to no questions whatsoever. So I don't. And somebody getting out of a mom van with no identifying marks on them at all. They're just wearing camo and riot gear, and they walk up. Yeah, it's super disturbing. You never want your law enforcement to be
No,
to
no.
operate in such a way.
Never want them to be the Gestapo?
Well, I mean, for me, the most disturbing part, aside from the fact that they put hoods over these people so they can't see where they are, they don't tell them who they are. There's the problem of if one of these people was armed and ready to defend themselves and thought they were being kidnapped, you're going to end up someone shooting a police. Well, actually, in this case, it was ICE, which, by the way, they're using ICE because that gets around posse comitatus, so he's getting around the Constitution here. And all that aside, there's no records of it. There's no records. That is exactly what Pinochet did. No fucking records. If this is on the up and up, why are there no records?
Yeah, if it's on the up and up, why are they using ICE officers? Why aren't they identifying themselves? Why aren't they following any kind of normal police procedural, letting you know that you are under arrest or being detained for an investigation? None of that was done. There's no way to discern whether these people are legitimately law enforcement. They just come out of a very unusual van for law enforcement. They walk up to you and pick you up and take you away, and your friends don't know where you are. Your family doesn't know where you are. Nor can they find you. I mean, if they call the police and say, hey, what's going on? The police didn't even know this was going on. The Portland police didn't.
Yep.
So, I mean, how are you going to find any information? I mean, that is incredibly disturbing. I mean, anyway, you do not want law enforcement to be acting in this way. It will shatter the perception of the rule of law.
Okay,
Yep.
So when the inevitable happens and someone gets shot, as in one of the officers, when one of the officers catches a bullet between the eye, what's going to happen to that person? Legally speaking, what's going to happen to that person?
Depends upon how much they actually want to publicize what's going on. I would imagine that that person's probably going to go to prison for a very long time for, attempted murder of a law enforcement official or a federal official.
I would imagine that they'll be shot in the head or beaten into a pulp, or both.
I mean, I could see them falling out of an airplane, but I'm trying to withhold hope that wouldn't be the option. My assumption is they get turned over to law enforcement and actually goes to like a criminal charge, to a criminal case. My problem is they didn't identify themselves. They don't appear to have police or FBI or ICE or anything on their military attire. I have my military camos from when I was in the Marine Corps. I wouldn't know if it was somebody that just had these uniforms hanging around that are terrorizing people.
Well, you don't even have to do that. You can go online and buy, ACUs. You can buy the newer, I don't know what they're calling, the newer battle dress uniform. I wasn't special enough to get the cool new stuff. We used BDUs, so, but I still have all of that stuff too. I have all of my uniforms from the Navy, so it's not very difficult to go online and buy them. I mean, they're easily obtainable just because they're wearing camo. And I wasn't paying super close attention, but I don't know if anybody actually looked to see if it's a legitimate military camouflage pattern. Because there's plenty of knockoff military uniforms that you can get not only from other nations, but just a civilian type pattern that imitates the military patterns. I mean, you have to have some sort of identification, and the thing that really sucks is if they decide they're going to press this legally, which I don't know if they would, if somebody actually tried to defend themselves thinking that they're about to be kidnapped by thugs, that person's in a lot of trouble if they shoot them, because they are federal officers, and this has gone to court before, and the person who did the shooting didn't come out well. So,
yep,
even though there was no identification,
Okay, there was no identification in that instance that you're referencing?
Correct.
The one that went to the U.S. Supreme Court the one that I usually use that went to the Supreme Court, Texas, two white guys are just beating the living hell out of a black guy. Guy comes up and says, hey, guys, stop, get off him, you're going to kill him. And they're just beating the hell out of this black guy. So he engages, he fights, he severely injures one of the white guys, they subdue him, he's But in the end, they get him down too. It turns out that the two white guys were police officers. They had been arresting the black guy. He genuinely resisted arrest. This was not an abuse of power. He had genuinely resisted arrest. He had been armed. They had gotten the weapon out of him, but he was still resisting arrest. So to the untrained eye, it looks like they're just wailing on some black guy. Turns out this guy had genuinely been resisting arrest. They were plainclothes officers making the arrest. They had planned this for quite some time, and it just had gone south. The guy had no way of knowing. He thought it was a racial violence thing. He engages, and he got hooked for it. And the argument was, this isn't a country of vigilantism. There's a country of laws. You're not allowed to just engage even if two people are fighting. I'm not sure I buy that argument, but that was the justification, was that he was engaged in vigilantism. He didn't know the circumstances, and so he should not have engaged, and he did permanently injure one of the officers. I think one of the officers may have lost an eye. But he was found liable and got in serious fucking trouble. And to answer, so yeah. I don't know. There's another troll here, and I think, so without any crystal balls, I may have accidentally misspoke and said that that's a friend of mine and that I really like her. I've actually never met her in my life, and she's starting to be really mean. And I mean, really mean about the production values of this show. And if we could have a little more modding in the live chat, that would just be super. All right, well, hopefully no one will take that seriously. Last time I said that about Tony Designs, and 3 people tried to eject him. I didn't even have to. Just to be aware, they already had their fingers on the button. We'll just say that and leave that alone. So had another thing. I think it's a side issue. It doesn't matter, but I'll place a stamp on this because this needs to be said. Doxing's illegal, period. End of discussion. It's not illegal in every state. There isn't a federal law against it, although there's a federal law that's often used for it. Most states say it's illegal. As well, they should. I am actually kind of against anonymity on the internet. I think it empowers bullying and empowers all these other things. So long as there is anonymity on the internet, you have to respect it. And there can be serious consequences because we don't enforce no anonymity on the internet, because we allow anonymity on the internet. You can't just dox a few people and not everybody. So as long as there's anonymity on the internet, you have to protect that anonymity for everybody. But I think that's a side issue, and we can have a discussion on that later. And we can do a whole show on that, because that's actually we have a show on cyberbullying coming up. We're talking to. I think it's we're talking to an organization that works exclusively on how to deal with cyberbullies, how to spot cyberbullies, and this is a nationally recognized organization, and we're just trying to settle on the date and time. I would very much like to have them over to discuss it, because I think that's a very important topic. At any rate, it's a tough. I got to say though, when I saw all those guys coming out of the car, it was a small minivan. It was like one of the mom minivans, and it's just like it pulls up, 1 guy, 2 guys, 3 guys, 4 guys, 5 guys. It's like, it kind of looks like a clown car. I'm sorry, it's just like it's a clown car, and all the clowns are coming out. It's just that they're armed with AR-14s.
When I saw the video of that minivan, it doesn't have any tinted windows. All the windows were completely bare. There was no cage in there. It did not look like what would be a typical unmarked law enforcement vehicle. I mean, there were hats on the dashboard. You know, your regular caps on the dashboard. It looked like your typical mom and pop, I'm going to go to the grocery store type thing. That whole video, it just didn't. Something wasn't right about the whole video. The person getting arrested made no sound. If 2 people are coming at me to arrest me, and they don't tell me who they are, I'm going to raise a fucking stink. I'm loud. So
I think I like to think that I would have resisted that particular situation, because there was no indication that that was a legitimate law enforcement activity at all. From the vehicle they were using, to what they were wearing, to their complete actions. You know, none of that strikes me as a legitimate law enforcement operation. If they were ICE officials, that probably makes sense, because ICE doesn't generally identify itself. It goes and picks people up and carries them away to the immigration detention center. Yeah. You know, they're not a generalized law enforcement like you would expect to see, like the sheriffs or state patrol or city police, or even federal marshals. I mean, so the whole thing is just, it's super wonky. It's super disturbing to see, and it's something that needs to be spread around to absolutely
and the
everybody.
point that you make the perfect point. At some point, this is going to happen to someone who's armed. And I think we just lost Zandring. Yesterday, or whatever day it was, we had the after show. Zandring brought up the point that sooner or later, someone is going to be armed.
Yep.
Mike, you cut out.
I'm still here.
No, Zandring's still here. I hit the disconnect button on his Zandring like 4 times, and it didn't work. I'm starting to think he's supernatural, but, you know.
Yeah, that's because I was the first one in. You can't disconnect me or it dumps the whole damn show.
I don't. You're holding me hostage. This is hostage. Oh, Jesus. Which is, quite frankly, I mean, at this point, first of all, I can't see dumping everybody here, reducing the production value of the show at this point. I just, that's not going to happen. We're working our way out of the gutter here. For which, actually, and we've been joking a lot. You guys were genuinely very, very patient, and I do apologize. This is actually, so like I said earlier, and I'm going to do my lame excuses, and then we're going to move on to the actual show. So we switched over to vMix.
I do have a question.
Yeah, please.
For you. And it's just a production type thing. I can see on here the overlay that's going out to YouTube. I get feedback on both. I can't eliminate the sound from one or the other, so I can only have one or the other running. But it looks like the overlay that actually shows up on YouTube, and I watch it, and the big center screen there, which currently has the Skype emblem in it.
Yep.
My question is when I actually turn my camera on, I can see myself now. Is that actually on YouTube?
Yes,
or is that just an overlay that I'm seeing in here?
Everything you see there is, so we mirror the entire show to everybody who connects so that they can see, because there's nothing worse than going into a show. I've been on plenty of shows, and you can't see what's going on. You can't see the people you're talking to. So we mirror the entire show to everybody who connects, which I like. I think is a good idea. But what's happening right now is there is a system that allows us to put into that center window. We can put into that center window any active speaker, whoever's talking. But for some reason, when I did that, we weren't getting the sound at all. When I put in one person, and that happens to be you because you were the first one in, now everyone can hear us. Now there is probably a way around this, but I'm a little hesitant to tinker with it. I probably will in a minute. I think I have an idea, which is to put you hidden in another window. We get the sound through you, and then we put the active speaker, that's whoever's talking, in the middle window, which is really the way it should be set up. But this was kind of a hack job done. I was wondering
if that was, you were going to have it set up so that you would see whatever. I mean, nobody else has their camera on anyway, so you just still see the blue Skype thing. I'm just curious because I'm getting ready to take off for Phoenix, so I'll be getting up and moving around in the truck a little bit, so my camera may not be on all the time because I don't really need to flash my nasty trucker ass crack at you.
No, I appreciate that. We have a tendency to get demonetized. Yeah, no, we get demonetized really quick on this channel, but I do nonetheless appreciate you not doing that. So thank you. Now let me figure out. So you see, there's 3 cameras that are actually built into the screen, but this is so. Here's the thing for this software to work. And we don't have this problem with OBS, but this is much more powerful software. But one problem we have is we have to rebuild each show separately and we can copy some elements from one show to another, but each show has to be rebuilt. So we've got 3 shows in time, overtime, the after show, and we do have Stitch. We're just not in production on Stitch right now. But so each show has to be done. The after show was the last one because it was the least important. It's now up. It's connected and working, but it wasn't prepared to handle the issues we had. So everything's just it's working, and I'm going to do that. I will fix that in just a second and try to do it without ditching the sound. The easiest way is to just drop the Xandering into a second window. No, I did not say drop Xandering out the window. That's a different thing. I'm always tempted, but here on In Time, we are against most forms of violence.
In Minecraft.
So where were we? We were on. I was making fun of Without Any Crystal Balls, then I was making fun of Tony. I think we're having a very hard time staying on topic. I don't know who to blame on that, but it's probably not. So
we were talking about
yeah.
the kid not making any noises, and I mean he made some noises, but didn't that helmet that he was wearing go across his face, or was it just like some face mask he had?
The kid, the one they were arresting.
If you want to call it arresting, yes.
I don't remember. Okay, so the argument they made was they no, they didn't make an argument. I have heard an argument now that they did have probable cause because he was wearing riot gear. Okay, couple problems with that. If you're going to make that argument, fine, you can make that argument. But then I can tell the police to arrest anybody who's carrying an AR-14. Yes. I'm just going to say it from now on, just because I know his Andrew just cringes every time I say that.
That's fine. I mean, if you want to keep saying it, I'll just keep correcting you. I mean, all you're doing is making yourself look like you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Well, when y'all are done, I've got something to add to this whole riot gear thing.
All right,
go ahead, Nick.
So let me finish this real quick, and then you can tell me. So the AR-15, if you're carrying an AR-15 walking down the street, which you can completely do, and there are people who like to do that. I'm not great and comfortable with it, but there are people who like to do it, and they have that right now. They have the right. So when they're doing that, the police can't go up to them and say, you know what, you're carrying a lethal weapon down the street in a civilized, country. That's probable cause. In fact, there was a shooting down that way, so we're going to arrest you. They cannot fucking do that. And I stand by the fact that they can't do that because that's also part of what protects my. They can't do that. There are laws I'd like to change, but based on how they are right now, they cannot do that. But I've had a lot of people sit there and say that they have the right to do that, and then now those same people are saying he was wearing riot gear, so we have to arrest him. And somebody pointed out sometimes people wear riot gear to the protests because they're afraid they're going to get killed. So they want to watch. They want to participate without the violence, but they wear protection in case. So he was in full riot gear. Presumably that may have been the PC, the probable cause, but we don't know. Nobody knows, and you can't use that as PC anyway. And actually, it couldn't have been because he was targeted. These vans were going around looking for specific individuals, which is another thing that's scary. And so far that we're aware of, none of those individuals participated in any crimes. So what were you going to say?
In Georgia, there is a law still on books that says that if you're walking around in the wrong type of clothes, and it lists off stuff like all black clothing, a hoodie, stuff like that, that law gives the authority to the cops to stop and probe to find out if you've done anything wrong.
We now have 2 Azandrings. That's probably about the only thing worse that I can think of one. But anyways, well, that's somebody had said that this is basically stop and frisk meets Guantanamo Bay. And that what you're describing sounds like stop and frisk, and it's a terrible policy, and I don't think you can. People have a right to wear what they want. Oh, geez. And the hoodie one is. Oh, that's not racist. Oh, so I mean, there were a couple other points that I'd like to bring up, but yeah, please.
No, what I was meaning, though, is not even the stop and frisk combined with Guantanamo Bay. This law in Georgia has been on the books for several decades. And my personal belief is that it allows them to target certain demographics. Fine, whatever, it needs to be fixed. What I was getting at when I was saying that, though, is if Seattle or wherever that thing happened has any type of law that mirrors Georgia law in that aspect, then ICE could have gotten around any legality issue with picking the kid up the way that they did, because they could say, well, he was wearing the wrong type of clothes. There's our probable cause. We wanted to get him away from a situation that might be dangerous for all parties involved. So we took him to some unknown warehouse, did what we need to do, and then released him 2 hours later.
All right.
Well, they have, there are several laws, and most states have some sort of law where they're talking about, suspicious activity. They can at least detain you for investigation if you're committing suspicious activity. I watch a lot of like First and Second Amendment auditor programs to see how the people handle, like somebody walking down the street with an AR-15 on them, or somebody walking around with a camera just taking pictures or videoing, public buildings, to see how law enforcement responds. That's their entire goal, is to see if they respond correctly or not. At least ostensibly. I think some of them are just out there, poking the bear. They just want to make a scene. But that there have been several instances where both just the First Amendment auditors and the Second Amendment auditors, oftentimes doing the same together, carrying a firearm and a camera taking pictures, they're stopped, they're detained briefly for investigation because they're like, look, this is unusual behavior. We don't have people just wandering down the street taking pictures of government buildings with a rifle strapped across their chest. So they'll stop it. They do have the ability to stop you and detain you long enough to to ask you some questions if you're doing something suspicious or out of the ordinary, and that's generally true. And I would imagine in most states. But they don't take you away for that. They stop you there and ask questions. They can't just haul you off. If they're detaining you, they cannot haul you off. They have to detain you on spot. They can't, if they're going to arrest you, then they can remove you and take you to another facility. But they have to put you under arrest to do that. They can't just detain you and then haul you away under being detained.
All right, so I'm gonna Michael Westby, who was in the chat and then he got booted. Technical issues. I do sincerely apologize. $5 super chat. So he got booted right before his point. So is the government listening in? Got booted right as I bring up. Is this the society we want to live in? So again, I really do apologize, and I'm sorry. I do hope you'll try to come in one more time. I think we've got it stable now. Wasn't quite prepared. Each of the shows we have also has very different technical difficulties. None of the other shows is set up to be able to have multiple people come in and everybody can see everybody. And again, we mirror the show to everybody. One other show has guests. One show is done for evidence coming in. It's crazy. What? Okay. What? Well, let's just prepare for the snarkiness. I'm ready. Just hit me.
I don't recall there being any technical difficulties when you had me on to talk about guns.
It was a different show. This is a different show.
Republicans
this
like
is
guns.
The after show.
So, of course they're not going to care.
They're not going to screw with it because there's somebody that actually wants to say, hey, we should maybe keep our population armed.
Yeah, I
think a lot of responsibility goes along with that, and I think that there are people who shirk off that responsibility. And I think that if you do shirk off that responsibility and you do something dumb or tragic, that you should face the consequences for that.
Yes, and there is.
It's not a joke carrying firearms around. It's not a joke. I mean, sure, it's a lot of fun, and you can joke around and have fun. Say at the shooting pit or something. But these things aren't toys. And they require a great deal of respect, and you should know what in the hell you're doing, and you should treat them with respect at all times. And, I watch YouTube videos, they say gun fail videos, and I watch some of the, the activities and people are engaging in with firearms, and I cringe, and it's like, I guess maybe I can kind of sort of see Nick's point with wanting to take guns away from people.
Well, and I'll give you one in return, which is, if we're going to keep the guns, the one thing I cannot understand, and just has to be changed under any and all circumstances, is the fact that right now, the way the gun lobby has set it up, and they've succeeded in doing this, if you are reckless about your firearm, that's exactly what you were saying, you leave it out just on your bed, your kid comes up, grabs it, accidentally shoots somebody else, or deliberately goes into a school and blows a whole bunch of people away, you have no liability. You have no liability in most cases. That's insane. That was entirely your fault. You weren't being responsible with it, and I just can't. And I think I would feel a lot more comfortable with guns in this country if we had some genuine common sense about some of the stuff. Let's get back to the. This was something. We've had a lot of good comments.
I don't know how we got on. I don't know how we got on Second Amendment. It's because I'm here.
Because the conservative refuses to talk about anything else, and I think it's overcompensation for the fact that he knows he's invested repeatedly on the same.
Well, I mean, this is a really good example why I actually want the population armed is because of tactics like this. I mean, these are the exact kinds of tactics, that people want to have firearms for. I mean,
well, I've got a question about that then. If I don't, but let's say I smoke weed in my free time, should I be able to have a gun?
Yes.
If I get arrested if I get arrested for having a joint in my possession, should I be able to have a gun?
Yes.
If I get arrested for 2 joints in my possession, should I be able to have a gun?
Yes.
Okay, at 2 joints, Georgia specifically, I don't know about other states, at 2 joints, you're no longer allowed to have a gun.
Oh yeah, because I think the laws generally go with certain kinds of violent gross misdemeanors or any felony, and
Felonies.
yeah, and if you get a felony like drug possession charge, or you get like a felony tax evasion, they take away your rights to own a gun, which I believe are wrong. I mean, I can understand as a punishment for, say a violent crime, a serious assault. Now, I'm not talking about simple assault where you got into a bar fight with someone. But serious assaults and felony assaults, especially with weapons, I can see that removing your right and ability to own a firearm could be a prudent consequence for something like that. But I don't agree with the blankets, and I don't believe with taking them away for life either. I mean, you give somebody a sentence, they serve their sentence, they're supposed to have served their time, and their rights should be restored. And I understand that somebody went on a shooting rampage, and for somehow they only got life in prison, and whatever reason they get paroled, and they finish their parole, and they're like 96, hobbling around. And it's like, well, do you really want this person to be able to go buy a firearm again? It's like, well, if they weren't sentenced, if they completed their sentence, then you should restore all of their rights. Now I could see imposing a sentence, a legal sentence, where it would ban you from gun ownership for the rest of your life. But it's kind of the thing about voting. Once you've served your time, you should be able to. And I don't think drug crimes are in and of themselves, like drug possession crimes. One, I don't think they should be a crime. But that gets into a whole nother area of criminal reform.
Well, so yeah, I do think. I mean, I think they're lucky that they've done this in California. No, I said California. Sorry, they've done this in Oregon, which it doesn't have a lot of gun ownership. If they do this anywhere in the South, they haven't done this yet.
Yeah, specifically Portland. I mean, they used it. They did it in a very progressive city, one that has been known to be very lenient to rioters. The city government there has constantly allowed groups and mobs of people to take whole sections of that city hostage and do nothing to really stop them. So I mean, they picked their city very carefully. The likelihood of coming across somebody in Portland at one of these events that's actually armed, is not that great.
But isn't Portland open carry?
Yes. The state of Oregon is a constitutional carry state. Yes, you can carry openly, but that's true in all 50 states.
Well, but now Trump has publicly sort of half acknowledged the program, but what the BBC has reported is that he's basically acknowledged, the White House has acknowledged this program, and that Trump seeks to expand it, and he has actually now said that there are tactics that they are using in Portland that he now wants to see, and I mean, he said we need to do this nationwide, and presumably he's talking about this program. It seems almost certain that he's talking about this program. So,
and here's what I think about that particular thing, because I don't think our Marmalade Mussolini is specifically trying to become dictatorial in this.
Yeah.
I think what he's trying to do is establish the authority to send federal forces, federal authorities into places that are having things like riots, to make himself look good, to try and make himself look like he's the law and order president. He's tough on crime. He's not going to let these liberal crybabies who are tearing up cities get away with it. I think that's his entire thought process. And I don't think he's really thought through at all the consequences or what this program actually does. And he needs to be stopped, because this is not an okay kind of policy, and implemented nationwide. I don't necessarily think that Trump's going to be trying to implement this again. Well, he may try and implement it against his political opponents or people he doesn't like that are criticizing him. But I'm worried about future presidents. I mean, I don't want future presidents to have that power.
Oh, of course. I may have. So hold 1 second. We had an incoming call, and I think I. Oh dear Lord. Hello there. I think I may have disconnect. I shouldn't have disconnected the others. I don't know. Let me see if I can. So I think what we're gonna do now is have a monkey take over
He
production
thinks will
of the
make
show.
himself look better. I think he cares more about his image than he cares about actually getting anything done. No, I keep saying Marmalade Mussolini because I just think Arn Ra's characterization was hilarious.
Yeah. Sorry, I think the sound may have cut out there a little while ago. I was saying maybe we need to get a monkey to produce the show. Probably couldn't do much worse than me.
Yeah, I just think he's horribly incompetent.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a good point. We discussed that earlier. I don't think.
Andrew, you bring up.
Oh, yeah, please go.
Because Andrew, you brought up a great point that I didn't even think about. Is the whole that this program was rolled out for lack of better term in a very progressive liberal city. What happens when this happens in, say, Atlanta, Georgia, or New Orleans, Louisiana, or Dallas, Texas?
You're going to have a hell of a lot. Well, it depends upon. I mean, it looks like they carefully selected who they were going after. If they were to continue carefully selecting instead of just, broadly expanding the program to just pick up whoever in the hell they want to pick up or feel like they should be picking up, then I think they're going to start running into problems. They will eventually run into somebody who's armed. They will run into somebody who's not going to take two strange people getting out of an unusual vehicle coming after them. They're not going to take that well. They're not going to go quietly, and they're going to resist. And then you're going to end up with a mess.
Yeah.
We had a
mess that can be completely avoided.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Go ahead, Nick.
No, we had a call come in, and I just missed it, so it's just I'm not getting notifications in my ears, so I don't hear it. And if I don't see it, because it's on a screen that's about 3 feet away from the main screen, so I'm keeping an eye on it.
That might have been me.
Okay. All right, so we got you in now. Anybody else? You may have to try a couple times. I do apologize, but we are getting people in, and we're clearing the process. So I do appreciate your patience. I appreciate everybody joining us, because I do. We're making fun of somebody. Somebody pointed out, and I thought this was interesting. We're in the United States, and we are making fun of squads of unmarked vehicles and military personnel going around and picking people up off the street, and we're joking about it. We joke about it because we don't have anything else to do, but that's the state we're in right now. That's pretty. Now the point, we had Agrippa in the chat earlier. In the VC, and he brought up a point I hadn't considered, which is he's just like, well, now this is going to start happening in the UK and Australia. And I was like, oh, fuck you. You just try to. No, they're not gonna just sit there and say, oh, America's doing this. It's a good idea. But the point he made, I think, in essence, was, in some really bizarre way, the U.S. is still actually the leaders of the world. I mean, we've shirked a lot of our responsibilities. We've fucked up a lot of things. But if in this country it's okay to do it, other countries are going to sit there and say, hey, if they can do it in the U.S., we can do it here. And Boris Johnson isn't that far from Trump. He's just not. And, I mean, basically, with Boris Johnson, it's like they took a look at Trump and said, hold my beer. And I didn't realize that they were having some similar troubles in Australia. Yeah, please.
I think that some of that comes down to they look at what the federal government in the U.S. can get away with doing.
I
don't know if they're looking at this going, hey, I think their policies are great. I think they're looking at it and says, hey, these policies give us further tools to, at our disposal, and the American people, who are supposed to be, these extremely liberal, and I mean liberal as in believing in liberty, people who don't want their governments to become tyrannical, which is the whole reason that they stupidly keep their, clinging to their firearms. If the government can get away with this kind of policy and the American people are going to let them, then that's maybe a policy that we could use here and add some more tools to our toolbox to be able to, control situations in such a way that is most beneficial. I'm cynical, so I always believe that the government tries to manipulate things to its own advantage and not necessarily advantage of its people. So I think that they look to see what the government can actually get away with doing.
Well, and unfortunately, I mean, just really across the globe, countries have been successfully electing the more populist but authoritarian and or fascist leaders. I mean, just countries just across the globe, and it's like now that it's really happening in the U.S. and this is just not. And you had said this earlier, and I feel like I'm shouting down from my ivory tower elite or elite ivory tower, and I'm being one hell of a prick. But I sit there and say, if you've read any history, open up a history book, pick a page, put your finger on it. If you've read any history, this is how they all start.
Yeah.
This is how
Exactly.
they all start.
It's like go find any kind of dictatorial or oppressive regime anywhere through history, any one of them, and go look at the tactics they employed at the beginning and as it progressed before it got super bad, before hundreds of millions of people were killed. And this always appears. This exact tactic always appears.
And
it's
again,
one of those warning flags that pop up that should wake everybody up and say, oh shit, this is a really bad thing.
Yeah, we've crossed a line, and I'll tell you something. We work very hard on this show to not be alarmist. I kind of like being alarmist because I get more subs, I get more people watching. They go, "Oh my God!" And okay, we don't do that, and it takes longer to build a reputation, but that's what we want to do. When the Iran crisis happened, World War III was a trending hashtag, and one of the things I said was, "Okay, look, you want to know something? Yes, every world war that has ever started exactly this way." But this kind of thing happens 4 or 5 times a year. It's not usually covered, and it doesn't start a war. It's more likely than not that something like this is going to happen because nobody wants another world war. Nobody wants it. Everybody wants to avoid it. The way the economies work right now, nobody wants it. It's bad news for everybody. So while, yes, every world war started like this kind of thing happens all the time and doesn't necessarily start a world war. So, it's sort of affirming the consequent. If every time there was a war, this happened, people think that every time this happens, it must cause a war. No, it doesn't work that way. That kind of thing happens a lot. There's a missile attack that hits a submarine. There was a Pakistan and India going at each other. We get kind of uncomfortably close to a world war reasonably frequently, and it's not as big a deal as it feels. This is different. I'm not saying that this time. This time I'm not going out there saying we shouldn't be worried about this. And I have said it with other things Trump's done. Trump's done other things that I really don't like. And I say, well, look, it's a bad thing and we should fight it, but it doesn't mean that he's going to turn into a dictator. It's not the first step in a whole snowball. It's a bad step. He shouldn't have done it. And it is a step in that direction, but it doesn't mean that we can really say this is different. And it's like, I'm glad that people are coming on to sort of say that they concur, because sort of like it's just really strange that nobody, and the coverage of this so far has been like the state's response. They're suing. It's like, oh my God, they're suing the government over this. It's like, good. I'm glad. I'm really glad. That's not the story. You buried the lead there, buddy. That ain't the story. So anyways, to tell you the truth, I'm just glad because right before yesterday's show, because I was just like, I don't want to be alarmist, but this is what I'm seeing. And we talked about it on In Time, and we talked about it with those. I hit the bases with a few other people and said, guys, am I way off base, or are you guys seeing this too? And said, yeah, we're worried. So we're just sitting there going like, okay, we're going to be honest. Now we're worried.
This kind of thing is unprecedented within the United States borders. I mean, it's not unprecedented outside of the U.S. borders. I mean, the U.S. has done some pretty damn sketchy things like this. But against its own citizens, I mean, this isn't something that happens.
The communist scare with people calling the police and saying, I found someone who's degenerate, someone who's communist, etc. Things like that happened. It probably wasn't as bad as this looks like it's going to be.
But there was records of this stuff happening.
That's true.
I mean, it wasn't, they weren't just disappearing. I mean, they were coming in and making it quite public, because they were trying to gin up the whole communist issue, and they're like, oh, the communist subversion. So they wanted to bring attention to that because the public opinion at the time was very hard against communists, and I think rightfully so. Although some of the actions I took, I think, were ridiculous, especially looking back on it. But they wanted that kind of attention. I mean, some similar things happened with the Japanese internment during World War II, where people would just show up and take entire Japanese families, but they weren't disappearing. They were going to internment camps. They were public about it because they had the population, the general population of the United States in favor of. They had them ginned up to be supporting this, so they wanted as much attention around this as possible. This doesn't seem to be really garnering any attention. They're disappearing, and they don't want people to know what's going on. And they do things like this, and I'm not saying that Trump is particularly smart enough to have tried this, but I'm sure somebody somewhere was, that it's rolled out in some place and against people who are generally held to be unpopular. If you look at the general polling of the actions and the citizens take in Portland, it's viewed unfavorably nationwide. So it's used against unpopular people doing unpopular things. And so the public, or generally the idea is the public will support that because it's used against bad people or used in what would be considered a good way until the practice becomes normalized. Once it becomes normalized, it can now be used anywhere against anyone. And that needs to be stopped before it becomes normalized against people you don't like. It's one of the reasons why I was so against booting that crazy conspiracy nut off of Alex Jones off of YouTube. It's like you don't want to be going down this. It's like, great, I think he's a freaking nutcase too. But eventually, once this becomes normalized, that you're getting rid of people who are just whack jobs. Well, now they're going to start getting rid of people who are engaged in honest discourse, and you don't want to get to that point.
Well, and I want to add one more too, which was in that case, it was a single senator who basically went rogue and gained way too much power for a single senator. But he wasn't going to take over the country, and he wasn't going to. And this was just his one bag. I mean, this was just he does this and poof. Trump on the 4th used rhetoric like liberals are trying to undermine the American Revolution, and they're trying to destroy this country, and they're starting a cultural revolution, which is actually a phenomenally loaded word. I don't think he knew it. Somebody had to hand that to him because he doesn't know what that word means. But that's not an accidental term. That is not an accidental term. And so he's talking about liberals as terrorists. And the problem is, if you can do this to just anyone on the street, you can do this to terrorists. And if they're terrorists who he already thinks you should be able to kill their families, I mean, he said this repeatedly. He's doubled down on it. He said it. He stopped only when he realized it was a war crime and someone might actually take him seriously, and he could get some. But is there anybody here who thinks he wouldn't be willing to do that? At least to send them to Guantanamo Bay, and oops, there was an accident, and they're surrounded by water, and there's airplanes, and But when you take all that, I mean, if he hadn't done the rhetoric about liberals being terrorists and that they have to be stopped at all costs and all, this is shit he's saying. One of the things that gets me, and I really hate the Hitler analogies, and I'm going to try to avoid them and try to come up with a better example of this, but the one that I've got right now is Hitler wrote Mein Kampf before he came to power, and he said, in the name of God, I'm going to wipe out all the Jews. I'm going to kill them all. He said this! He told the German people what he was going to do if he got elected, and their thinking was, nobody's crazy enough to actually say that and mean it. So every time somebody tells me that Trump doesn't really mean it, he fucking means it. I know he means it. And we shouldn't have to gamble on he means it. Let's assume for a second he doesn't. Some idiot is going to think he does and then go forward. But he means it. He absolutely means it. And he sees nothing wrong with it. And the more power that he gets to do genuinely illegal shit.
Can you guys hear him?
I'm sorry, what?
I have zero audio of you. It's cutting in and then it cut out for about your last 30 seconds.
All right. So do I have audio back or not?
With me too.
All right. So is this just on everybody? So it looks like they can hear me on the stream, but the audio cut out on the.
Yes, I guess Big Brother's listening in. No. Sorry.
Yeah. So I'll try not to repeat it too much so that the people in the live. But my point there is that And I do think when I have this other window open and I'm actually connected to YouTube on the back end, that's what's causing the problem, because I think that we're at the limit of capacity on the. So I think my concern is that Adolf Hitler wrote in Mein Kampf, "I'm going to go eliminate all the Jews in the name of God." He said that. He's going to kill them all. He said that. That has to be done in order for Jesus to return, all these other things. He said that. And people read it and said, he can't be serious because nobody in their right mind would possibly fucking write that and then go ahead and do it. So they elected him anyway, and he was freely elected in a democratic election. And then he went ahead and did exactly what he said. So when people say, I don't take Trump seriously, that's just rhetoric. No, I really take him seriously. And because he has said, hey, go beat up that guy and I will pay your bills, and then he's tried to do it, you have to take everything he says seriously. And he said, liberals are terrorists and they have to be stopped. And I'm powerful and I'm strong and I'm going to be the one to stop them. And, we're going to do, they're enemies to this country. And now he's kidnapping people right off of the streets. Is it kidnapping? Again, depends on whether there's probable cause, but I don't think there is, and they certainly can't prove it because, there's no way to know, because when you take all in a row all the ducks of everything that he's been doing, between that rhetoric, between hiding the COVID data, which is people are going to die because the CDC doesn't have that. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things about the Marmalade Mussolini that I do believe is that he has no care for the rule of law. He would much prefer to have, and working in the environment that he did, it kind of makes sense why he would think this way. He's much more thinking of at least the power position of being a CEO. We can argue about whether he was actually a business owner or whether he's good at it or any of that kind of stuff. But that's at least the mindset he's coming from. And having all of these restrictions on the powers of the president are, I would imagine, very frustrating for him. He doesn't understand or doesn't think that there's anything wrong with doing like what he's doing. Why can't I just say these guys are bad? Like I'm going to clean out my company of bad employees or bad managers,
yep. Yes.
And I'm just going to go clean these guys out. These are people that are damaging the country. I'm viewing the country as kind of my company. Yep. And I should be able to do all of these things. And I think he chafes at it, and he looks at ways that he can just simply act without having to go, recognize or get around, the restrictions on his power to be able to act. And that's kind of what I see going on, especially with, this kind of program and the way that they've had to finagle it around to be able to try and do it somewhat legally, or at least try. Somebody's out there saying, hey, you can't really do this. And they have to kind of find some sort of workaround, but it's not even just so much him. I mean, I don't believe that he wants to be like dictator of the world or dictator of the United States. He wants to be able to do what he wants to do when he wants to do it. And he's decided that these are the actions that I want to take, and I just want to be able to do them, and they shouldn't be questioning me. I know how to do this. And, of course, a lot of that has to do with his perception of being a strong leader in favor of, cleaning up what he sees as the bad elements of the country and getting things back where, he thinks that his followers or his supporters want the country to go. I am concerned that with all of these kinds of tactics, that somebody farther down the line who's a little bit more devious or more inclined to want to grab a lot more power, they'll use these same kinds of tactics. If we let them fly and we don't push back against this, with great force and say, no, you can't do this. No, absolutely not. Somebody else is going to look at this and say, hey, well, there's kind of a precedent here. You didn't kick up much of a storm when Trump did it, so I'm going to start using it as well, and this person may have a lot more nefarious intent. So even if you don't think that Trump's going to be the dictator, or you don't think that he's competent enough to accomplish this, somebody else is going to use this.
And I love the way you put it, because I think that's exactly how he's thinking. I think he thinks, I would never be a dictator. I don't want to be a dictator. I just want to control everything, and I want to force everybody to do what I say. That's all.
Exactly.
Can I add some stepping stones?
He doesn't see a problem with that, because that's the head of a CEO.
Yep, exactly. So what were we going to say?
Has Antifa legally been qualified as a terrorist group?
I don't know. To the best of my understanding, you actually can't, because of what it is. It's a bit like trying to say the Tea Party is a terrorist organization. Tea Party now actually, I think, is a registered organization. But when it started, it wasn't. It was actually a class. If people had a certain set of ideals and a certain set of feelings, you could say that they were Tea Party, whether or not even they self-identified. Although usually self-identifying would be considered a requisite for that class. I'm using class in the legal sense. I use that once, and people are saying, they're going, "Are you saying we're low class and you're high class?" It's like, no. I mean class in the legal sense, as opposed to a group, because a group requires some form of actual organization in some way. Somebody says, "Are you a member?" Yes, I am. Antifa is closer to a class, and it's been argued even that, like, okay, our soldiers in World War II were technically Antifa. May or may not be true. It depends on how you define Antifa. But if it's a class, you can't actually designate a class as a terror. Well, you can't yet. I'm sure Trump's working on it. Actually, he did. He said liberals are terrorists. Liberals are a class. I self-identify as a liberal, but that's a class. There is one organization, Antifa, that I know of. It is actually in Germany, and it's completely unrelated to any of this. As far as a formal organization, you would need it would have to have records. I think it would have to be founded actually off the U.S. shore. I don't think you can designate a terrorist organization within the U.S., if I recall correctly. So you can't do that with Antifa. But Trump has basically said he's going to do it anyway. So we'll see. Michael Westby in time is answering, how are we not bringing up the gross violations of the First Amendment, pulling people off the streets for what they... Yeah. Well, and it's like I do, and I use this argument when I do the gun stuff, and it works wonders on people, except some people who decide to just completely ignore the argument that the First Amendment is better than Second Amendment because it comes first, and one is better than two. But
well, it depends. Yeah. Well, one gun is not better than two guns. Two guns is definitely better than one gun.
Did Tony send you the link? How did you even get the link to come in here?
That sounds like something a fascist would say.
Oh, dear Lord.
Well, your ability to control two guns at the same time efficiently greatly diminishes than just having a single gun.
You're absolutely right. And proper trigger control, proper aiming, proper grip on your firearm is very important to achieve maximum accuracy. However, firearms break, and having a second one in a holster at your back when yours jams is incredibly useful.
So I think I just was accused of being a fascist a second ago. Yes. I don't know if I want to let this continue.
Hold on,
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
No, you do. I'm on your side. What he literally just said is Section 1 of the First Amendment, his first gun, is important, but it's always great to have Section 2 of the First Amendment.
It is.
Oh, yeah, that argument was a little over my head. But at least people stopped calling me fascist because they were starting to get a preview of what it was like when you guys couldn't talk, which is why I will reiterate my point. I think the shows are actually somewhat better when the guests are muted. I enjoy them more, but...
I actually kind of expected you to do that as at least a joke when we started our debate, to have me muted so that nobody could hear on my end of the argument. You could just say, "So, see, he has no response to my arguments."
Oh, I would never do that. What I would do instead is
I meant this as a joke.
No, I would never do that. What I would do instead is I would mute your side of the argument, but then I would pretend like you said something completely and totally inane. Wait, you need guns to defend yourself from the invisible, aliens that are coming down and attacking your home? Well, that's really interesting, Xandring. I think that's an interesting point. I have a couple of objections.
That would have been hilarious. I would have laughed.
It would have been hilarious until you start getting all red. You're just all like, that's not what I said. Oh, well, thank you, Xandring. I am so glad that you think I am the best host on YouTube. You're a pretty cool guy yourself, and I'm glad you came on here, and I'm glad you admitted that you're wrong about everything. It takes a big man to admit that on a YouTube channel, and you come back anytime. We love having you on air. But
that would have been more convenient than trying to actually address my argument.
It would have been more convenient, and probably would have had the same level of efficacy. But at any rate, so
I
let's
don't want to
see.
be known as just like that gun person either. I mean, there are so many other things that I care about than just guns. But
Hey, you're the one who's bringing it back to it. But unfortunately, I will say this: this has actually got me thinking more about your position, because I was like, it's a legit point. I mean, it's like it always just sort of seemed like such a joke and so far fetched. This, the government could come after you, and now, I mean, this is Pinochet level shit. It has to be noted, these men were returned with nothing. There's no harm, no beatings, no abuse of their civil rights outside of possibly being taken without probable cause. If there's probable cause, this is technically legal. But there has to be probable cause. I don't think there was, because if there was, they would have had a receipt or something so you could backtrack. No, I do not believe there was probable cause. I don't know for a fact that there wasn't. And you could make a long shot argument based on the what he was wearing. Fine.
So they were kidnapped, but nothing really bad happened to them.
Exactly. You get it. Why is
No.
this such a controversial? So my point is, it wasn't. Look,
she was.
Uh-oh. I think I know where that's about to head.
All I was going to say is, she was raped. Nothing really bad happened to her.
Well, no, let's not now. Like I said, I do want to try to avoid being alarmist, and the reality is, let's assume for a second, and I don't think this is the case, but let's assume there was probable cause. If there was probable cause, this is a little gray, but it is legal in my view. It's completely legal. Shouldn't have happened. Shouldn't be legal. He should not be able to use immigration officers in this way, because this is not an immigration issue, and he's trying to get around the Constitution. But technically speaking, this is completely legal. I don't believe there was probable cause, and even if there was, this is bad. But in Guantanamo Bay, I mean, we beat the living hell out of people, and we killed people, and we raped people. These are facts. This is not up for debate. And with extreme rendition, we tortured people, and in some cases, American citizens. That was rare, but we did. Now, that didn't happen here. So there are people who are going to say, you're being alarmist by saying, because they were actually, everything was completely legal. They were Mirandized, in fact. And technically on time. Late for what is usually best practices, but on time nonetheless. So, okay, fine. But the problem is that that's how Pinochet started too. And the problem is the people that they appear to have arrested aren't obviously criminals. There's no evidence they did anything wrong. They might have. Maybe they've been watching with binoculars and they caught somebody here spray painting graffiti on something, which at one point it looks like the defense that I think Trump used was these people have been spraying graffiti on a building. We're going to do that for spraying graffiti on a fucking building? That's what we're going to do? A van's going to pull up, military's going to come out, yoink you, and and then what's the next step? If this is permissible, what's the next step? The next step is finding a way to get them to confess. Nobody knows where they are. Nobody knows that they've been detained. They don't have family with a lawyer saying, let us know. The lawyer doesn't even know who to call. Because it took 3 days before we found out which organization was responsible for this. 3 days. And believe it or not, immigration, ICE, was not on the top of the list. Nobody sat there and said, hey, let's call ICE. I imagine it's immigration that picked these kids up.
It is entirely possible that everything was done with good intentions, and that they, all that may be true. And even if it was true and they had no intentions to make this into some scary, let's start disappearing people that we don't like, that's still where things like this lead. And it's still something we should be outraged about and not allow our government to do, specifically because of where it may lead. I mean, I generally hate slippery slope arguments, except that they keep coming true.
So Michael has said something. I think this is worth addressing. It's just like, this Gestapo bullshit's starting to get a little scary. It is, but let's acknowledge a few points. Right now, we have the right to see it and to discuss it, and that's what we're doing here. Like I said, I'm kind of surprised that we're doing this in time and not at a national level, and pieces of it are being picked up. But what concerns me is we're talking about the lawsuits stemming from this, and not the fact that this is happening. Now, there are some news organizations that are starting to push back. There are some people that are starting to push back. I don't know how the Senate is going to react. To the best, I have no idea. how they're going to react. And but we see this, and seeing it is the first step to doing something. Acknowledging that there's a problem is the first step to doing something. And I'm cautiously optimistic that this is something that, if we make people aware, if we talk about it, if we engage on it, if we speak openly and honestly about it, we can make progress on this. And I think this country has always been 2 steps forward and then 1 step back. It's always been that way. And Martin Luther King Jr. said that the arc of history was long and slow, but bending towards justice. And that's what it is. So yeah, and I think if it's going to be a lot, and we've had shows where people sit there and say that's a lot, because we're talking some pretty intense stuff. And I appreciate the trust that the audience has in coming here to discuss these things and offering pushback if I get something wrong, or if I'm saying we're having these discussions. But I think these discussions are important. And I appreciate everyone who's come into live chat, who's talked about. I appreciate you. You've been very supportive of us. So take a break if you need it. Anyone who needs to take a break, take a break. We all get overwhelmed. There's been a lot of bad news for 4 or 5 months now, and it's been tough. It's been really tough on me. My job is to sort of collate this all the time and try to put on a happy face and come out here. So you're doing good. You're doing good, and everybody here is doing good. And we're going to keep talking about this. We're going to get through it. And I really do appreciate it. Oh dear Lord, I want to remind everyone that it is illegal to record a YouTube channel and to download video. What I'm about to say, I'm going to go back and delete. There's going to be no evidence of this. I really like Xander a lot. I think he's a great guy, and I appreciate that he comes on here. Appreciate that you're here. I like Tony Designs too. Don't know why. I mean, I really shouldn't, given just all the horrible things he's done. But I don't know what they are. But I know there's a list. I know it's really long. It's been explained to me time and time and time again. It's really he's the destroyer of worlds. But I like him. And you know what? We're building our own community here, and a lot of people are chatting, and we're going to get through this. And this isn't easy on anybody. So. I appreciate the people who come in and hung out and who are giving their opinions and who have supported the show. And some people either can't or just genuinely don't want to. They're like, I just watched because Nick's a clown and I want to see him fuck everything up. So, okay, that's great. Welcome aboard. Come on in. But, yep, and we always try to laugh and have a good time as well. But this is serious stuff, but it's not overwhelming. It's not something that it's not something that right now on the horizon we're talking about the destruction of the Union. But it's scary nonetheless, and it's heading in a direction that just has to be acknowledged is bad. And so we're going to talk about that. I think I think maybe reflected the opinions of the people in the voice chat, the people calling in here today.
No, I've got one more thing to add to all of that beautiful soliloquy.
Well, you definitely are a clown. I will agree to that.
And this is what they all missed, fortunately, when the audio was off. And I can't believe I was an idiot and fixed it. That was the biggest mistake of the night I made. I was like, I figured it out. You guys can come in. Anyways, yes, please. What are we going to add to that?
The one thing I would add is, why are our leaders, especially now with Republicans not wanting to back Trump, and a few articles that I've read that backing off, they're going to Pence instead of Trump for answers, COVID answers, stuff like that. Why are our leaders not going for impeachment round 2 and getting Cheeto Benito out of office?
Mitch McConnell.
Marmalade Mussolini.
No, it's Mitch McConnell.
I think it's because they all have their heads stuck so far up his ass that they can't see the writing on the wall. And they can't hear the cries for help.
That's better than my Mitch McConnell answer. That's more accurate.
That's why I made the caveat that there's a lot of articles here recently that are saying that the Republican, like governors, a few senators, are distancing themselves from Trump because they're tired of hearing crap from their voter base, and they're there since. They're lower than the president. They have more immediate ties to the community that they're over. The governor of Georgia is from Georgia. The governor of Missouri is from Missouri. They have more ties to it, so they're more interested in their populace. That's why I added that caveat.
Yeah, that's the exact reason why I want less power at the federal level and more power at the local level. Because there's more accountability, there's more direct, the politicians and the leaders are directly facing the population. And if you have a problem, it's like, I know it's a little bit harder in Washington because it's a slightly higher population state, but I can at least get an appointment to go see my governor. And I certainly can go get an appointment to see our county commissioner or the mayor of my town, although technically I guess Acme, Washington doesn't really have a mayor. But, I can't get an appointment to go see the president of the United States.
Well,
and
yeah,
that's your first comment. That's something that I think Landon Knoll mentioned the last stream. I don't remember. It was someone that I heard mention, and it's something that's near to me because I drive to Atlanta every night. I'm coming back from Atlanta right now. And you had the Atlanta mayor sign a thing saying face masks are mandatory. And then you have Brian Kemp turn around and say, no, disregard her letter. It's not legal. And now they're in a back and forth as far as a legal battle of who has the authority to sign that stuff.
Yeah, which is just the antithesis of what I had been led to believe the Republican Party was about. Yeah, and I think
states actually have quite broad authority to institute policies and consequences for not following policies when it comes to public health. Federal government doesn't. Thankfully,
yeah, but this was
have.
a local. This was the mayor of a city.
Atlanta.
It was the mayor of Atlanta saying, "I am going to require for medical reasons face masks in Atlanta," and then the governor of the state said, "No, you're not." And Atlanta, Georgia said, "I already did. This is an executive order. As mayor, you cannot come into this city without a face mask." So then he signed an order as the governor of Georgia saying that no local policies implemented by mayors in this state regarding face masks are valid. And she says, you can't invalidate a local order. I can do what I want in my city, and you're going to wear a mask. And he said no, and so she sued him.
And it'll have to be bared out in court, but the general understanding that I have of it is, let's say alcohol, for example. If the federal government says the legal drinking age is 21, then a state can turn around and say, no, we don't think 21's good, let's do 24. And the federal government can't do anything. But if the state will say, no, 21 is garbage, let's do 18, then that's where you have a problem, because the state can make laws stricter, but not more lenient. And that's the issue we have here, because
except there is no federal law with regards to the drinking age for alcohol. Those are all state laws, and the government strong-armed the states into raising all of their ages to at least 21 because they can withhold funds, like highway funds and things like that. Wyoming was one of the last states to raise their drinking age to 21, and this was a big fight and thing going on when I was in high school, because the drinking age was 19 and the state didn't want to change that, and they were threatened with loss of funds because the federal government can't force the state of Wyoming to raise its drinking age to 21, but it can pressure it through various ways. That's what eventually happened, and they did eventually raise the drinking age to 21. But you have to be careful about like the governor has to have some sort of legal backing in the state's constitution. Now, if in the state's constitution it specifically grants some sort of authority like that, or bars authority like that to a mayor, now they're going to have to take it to court and fight over who has actual jurisdiction for that. So that'll be interesting to see. It's not often that you have cities and governments, cities and states fight.
Well, and to quickly address where I think you're going with this, what I think your point is going to be is that, well, since the Atlanta governor's restrictions are tighter than the restrictions of the state, then the state can't sit there and say you can't make tighter restrictions because that's like traditionally how certainly not between federal and state level, that's not acceptable, and so you're trying to equate the two. The problem is, I think he's going to argue the reverse. What he's going to argue is your restrictions are actually have a greater impact against First Amendment rights to not wear a mask, and that makes them illegal, and we're protecting our citizens. So I think that's where that's going to come down.
Okay, but the whole your First Amendment stops at the tip of my nose is just as valid as a rebuttal for that. Then
I tend to agree. Listen, I'm not arguing with you. I'm telling you what I think he's going to do. But
right.
I don't.
Yeah,
I mean,
I've got the obligation, according to the Constitution, to go out to McDonald's or Walmart or something like that and get food to survive. And this puts a dampen on that for me because I've got 3 kids. One of them is an 18-month-old. And I drive to Atlanta every day. And the last thing I want to do is get coughed on.
well, I think again one of the problems is Trump has been criminally negligent in his handling of the COVID response, and I think one of the things is in saying, well, gee, it's going to be gone in a couple of. I mean, he went out publicly and said this will be over in like a couple of weeks, which we knew for a fact at that point was not even remotely close to true. We knew already by that point we were likely dealing with it for years. This show, he clearly doesn't watch this show because we had talked about that, and it's pretty. Everybody knew. So, and then he starts saying, well, gee, let's look into free basing household cleaners, and and it's like you're not reading anything that you're being given, are you? You're not looking at the death rate numbers. And he says, well, we lose people all the time to driving. Yeah, we lose 34,000 a year to actually, no, I think it's in the 42,000 people a year on our roads to car accidents, which is a lot. But that's in 365 days. We've lost over 140,000 in a couple of months, and those numbers are going to go up exponentially. This is going to get a lot worse, and we're looking at millions by the time this is done. So he's not, and he's clowning around. He doesn't even care. So I think. I think the problem is that's empowered people to say it's not that big a deal. It's a conspiracy. It's fake news. As long as people are saying that, he can get reelected. So he's doing this because he's thinking about how it benefits him, which I think is also criminal. And I think that's the same. He's actually getting into the trouble with the emoluments clause for the same thing. What he really thinks about is how does this office benefit me? It's all about him. And yeah, I don't think.
When was it that we were talking? I know that we were talking about that because I'm here in San Diego. I'm actually going to get ready to leave San Diego here shortly for Nevada, or not Nevada, Arizona. But I delivered over at Naval Air Station North Island, which is on Coronado Island, which isn't actually an island. It's got a big long spit of land that attaches it. And all along that area, it's got prime beaches. And I delivered Saturday morning, left the military base, and then my route takes me along the beach all the way down to anyway, almost to the border to get around. I can't go across the bridge over into San Diego with a semi. So I drove along the beach the entire way, and I would say maybe 10% of the people that were there were wearing face coverings. And we're talking like hundreds and hundreds of people are out here, and there's large parking lots along the way. And one of these parking lots is for, at least one of them, is for like RVs to park at. This place was packed. There were literally just a few feet between the RVs. And the thing was completely packed with RVs. Just people everywhere. And maybe 10% of them were wearing masks. And that's just a visual look, just looking at them as I'm driving by. There was one huge stretch where the speed limit's pretty low, so you can do quite a lot of sightseeing as you're driving through there. But yeah, it was kind of amazing, especially being here in California. I would have thought this would be one of those places. California state government loves to exercise its power and make rules and regulations. I'm actually shocked. And you come up to, like, I'm parked in the truck stop, the only truck stop in the area, so it's about 8 miles away from the city. I'm out in the middle of nowhere, Otay Mesa. It's the commercial truck crossing for Mexico. And the store here has signs right on it that says, face coverings are required to enter this establishment. And, I think it's an interesting argument about whether you can actually require people to wear face masks in public or not. And it's not an argument that I generally like to get into, because I think that it's a good idea to wear them regardless of whether it's a legal thing to force people to do it. Mm-hmm. But there's still people inside of this place not wearing face masks. It's unusual, and more, like the travel centers that I go to, most of them have a face mask requirement to go in. Some of them really enforce it, and others just don't. They got the sign right there, but they don't say a dang word to a single person who walks in without a face covering. They let them do whatever in the heck they want to.
You're expecting a minimum wage employee working slave labor to actually care about enforcing that?
If it's a company policy, that's would be part of their job description. I understand that there's been a lot of fight back against that, and I don't particularly agree with that either. You're going to go raise a stink and yell at an employee for enforcing a store policy. That's just kind of a dickish move on your part, but
yeah. Well, what I think we're going to do is start looking at wrapping this up maybe in about 10, 15 minutes. I do think we had somebody, Nate Brody had mentioned in one of his videos that we're forced to wear clothing. So obviously we can be forced to do some things. I think that's an interesting argument. We do need to look into either having him on, maybe on civil law again, and sort of discuss this. Although, like I said, on civil law, had right before we aired, made some opposite arguments, and I respect his position. I think we should have a discussion on it, but it's that may be a mildly contentious episode, which is not a bad thing. But I'd like to. We have to get some genuine legal perspective on this. So but thank you for the point, and I think we're gonna.
Yeah, I would like to see some legal arguments about whether it can. Taking away or taking out whether it's a good idea or not.
Yes.
Let's just ignore, because I don't think that anybody can really argue with, if you give them the premises, that COVID is all real and it's all of the numbers put out by the CDC. Let's say that pandemic is actually just as stated and it's as bad as stated. Because there's a lot of people out there that are arguing that it isn't. But if you given those, I don't think anybody can genuinely argue that it wouldn't be a good idea to wear a mask. So I'd like to take that portion completely out. Is it a good idea or not? Well, I think that it's a good idea. But let's take that part out and just focus on the legality of, can you actually force people to wear a face covering because there is a pandemic of some sort? And that would be interesting.
Well, we wouldn't have to fight about this legally if we educated people. Like if people actually took the education
yes.
of the issue. There was a meme posted on the Discord with Kid Rock walking about naked on the moon in reaction to the NASA saying you should wear protective equipment. Saying Americans.
Yeah.
If it's a failing of the government at this point doesn't need to worry about the legality of it. They need to worry about how do we educate the people.
Well,
Trump
I just
only
think that
just started wearing a mask.
It's actually legal.
Trump only just started wearing a mask, and it's like, it's even, the legality. It's just like, again, and I hate making the comparison. I don't want to. There's a lot of things that's unfair comparing Trump to Obama, but having said that, there's more fair to it than people give credit for. And the reality is, we know what would happen if Obama was here. he'd be wearing a mask every second you saw him. And he'd realize that even if he didn't need to wear a mask, because he's the only person in 100 feet, he'd be wearing one, because he knows people are going to emulate his behavior because he's the leader. He signed up for that job, and it's as much a responsibility as it is, whatever it is Trump thinks it is, an honor, a pleasure, his God-given right. I don't know.
I also think
It's a
some of
responsibility.
this is some of this resistance to mask. There's a fellow driver that is a lease operator for our company, and he refuses to wear a mask. He's just like, I'm not going to, period. And he actually went to the effort to actually learn every reason why somebody shouldn't be forced to wear a mask, so that he has this bullet point list of like 5 reasons why he shouldn't have to wear, or why he doesn't need to wear a mask.
Let me interrupt. He learned the list after he had made up his mind. So he made up his mind and then tried to find defenses for it. But please continue.
Yes, he did. And I firmly believe, after interacting with him and talking to him, I firmly believe that he simply doesn't want one. He doesn't like them. He doesn't want to have to carry one around. He doesn't like having it over his face. He simply doesn't like it. And then he went to justify his position, because there's several places that require them. So he's like, well, screw you. I'm going to go find all of the medical reasons why, somebody shouldn't be wearing a mask. And then when you tell me I have to, I'm just going to start listing off all these reasons why I can't. And and I have another friend who
I'm starting to not like your friends too much, Xandering. I'm just saying.
Well, the lease operator, we're not friends. I barely know the guy, but this trip we loaded in the same place, and so I got to talk to him for a little while. But my friend of mine, that he's more of a Facebook friend now, but I've actually met him. He used to live, we used to actually be in-person friends.
Oh, God, Xandering, pick a story and stick with it. Is he your friend or is he not your friend? I understand that, you're used to being a little slippery, especially when you're on this show, but pick a story, would you? Okay, he got fired. I'm sorry, I just had to please continue.
My actual friend, he got fired because he refused to wear a mask, and they had a company meeting, and masks were required, and he didn't wear one, so they fired him. And then he went on Facebook to whine about how he was let go, and he ended up deleting a post because there were so many people. It was like, you're just a freaking idiot. And my one comment to that whole thing is that's not really a hill I'm willing to die on. There are some hills that I guess I would be, stake down my livelihood and my life and stuff to, but wearing a
with
mask
your AR-14, and your AR-14 on that hill, yes.
I'm not I would be very upset and I would fight very hard, but I don't know that it's the hill I would be willing to die on.
Oh, okay. Yep. All right. So you're saying?
But yeah, it's definitely not over a stupid mask. And so sometimes I wonder about people, and it's like, I think that some of the really diehard people have just made up their minds they don't want to wear one. And then they go and search for reasons to justify their own personal comfort, I guess.
Well, and it appeals to your ego that you're going around without the mask because somehow you're special, and I get that, and you're standing up, and it makes you feel more like an individual. We went to a pool a couple days ago, and I'm actually still kind of nervous about doing that kind of thing, but they did a really good job. They were limited to I think only 20% capacity, same number of lifeguards. They wiped everything down in between. There was only 45 minutes. They wiped everything down. You had to wear a mask if you were not in the pool. So, and the pool is heavily chlorinated, and you have to wear a mask if you're not in the pool. It ain't perfectly safe, but it's not too bad. It was an outdoor pool, so okay. But there was one woman there who just wouldn't wear the mask, and nobody said anything. And the funny thing was, she was wearing it, actually. She had it. She just had it down below her chin, so it was just, the whole mask was down. It wasn't on her face. It was around her neck. And I'm sitting there going, you do realize everyone else here is following the rules. There is something about the, no, I'm above the rules kind of mentality, I think, and people just really, I think they do it also for that reason. And admittedly, they can be uncomfortable, so I get it. So it's just like, nope, you all can be discomforted. I am above being discomforted for this kind of thing, and I see through the fact that it's just not that serious.
Yeah, but I think that, and I think this happens a lot of times too, and it's something that I really do try to avoid. Is people tend to make up their minds about things based off of their own gut reactions, their own feelings about the topic, and then they specifically go and look for evidence to support their their stance instead of looking at the evidence first and then coming to an informed opinion about things. So I think people tend to go about it backwards. They form their opinion first based off their own personal feelings, and then they look for reasons to justify their opinions.
I think that's true. I think a lot of times they do that kind of on purpose. I mean, they're just they formed it. I don't think they're conscious that they're doing it, but then they say, okay, let me Google and find this. But the other thing that they'll do is they think they're being neutral, and they Google, but they use a loaded search term in Google, and it's garbage in, garbage out. If you have a bad search term, you're going to get back bad results. And if your search term isn't neutral but contains within it kind of the data you're looking for, you're going to get the data you're looking for. And so people can sit there and say, oh, no, I did the research. I did it completely neutral. Somebody will sit there and say, well, I Googled, are masks safe? And even that sounds like that should be that's a safer term to Google than others. But the reality is people were saying you should wear masks. What you'll see a website, CDC. These are all the reasons you should wear masks. And the last thing at the bottom will say, but some people say, are masks safe? Yes, masks are perfectly safe, and here's why. You're not going to get that site because it's not just about masks being safe. The ones that are going to come up first are the ones who write entire blog posts on are masks safe. And the only ones who do that are the ones who say they're not safe. You don't see the CDC writing 10 pages on are masks safe. You do see the conspiracy theorists writing 10 pages on whether masks are safe, and you can guess what their opinion is. So even just Googling, are masks safe? You're going to get a bias against reaching the conclusion that they are. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
So that's one in which you people think they're not being biased, but because of it's almost like an availability bias. The way you put it in, the availability of data based on how you phrase the terminology. So doing truly independent research is really fucking hard, and people don't
which is why I don't.
That's why I don't bother. I've noticed, but yeah.
If you've got a person that's stupid enough to have to search on Google, even if the CDC was the first one to come up, they're not going to click it because I can almost guarantee you that they're going to be right-leaning or with Trump or whatever the case may be to not trust, at the very least, the CDC's information.
Yeah, and it is incredibly difficult to do unbiased research on something because, generally speaking, most of the information you're going to look up is generally written from a biased point of view. I hate to say it quite that way, but I just mentioned it because we actually did it. The gun debate, I didn't go and try and make an unbiased search about gun statistics. I specifically went to places like Think Progress and America's for, I specifically went and looked for biased opinions against my position.
Yep. Which, by the way, kind of made it actually harder to fucking argue with you because you sort of had the steel man of my argument. You had the best, which I think is much more conducive to a good debate and something that you can enjoy and something that both sides can learn from. But in terms of just as somebody who's, I've done a number of debates, and I used to debate a lot more, but just for the YouTube debates, I sort of haven't gotten into it as much as I'd like, but I've done a few. Doing the steelman version of the argument, if you do it right, that really makes it, people think that you need to weaken the other guy's argument. Now, you should try strengthening the argument, and then saying, okay, here's the stronger version of your argument, here's why it's wrong. And that takes more time. It's a law of declining returns. I mean, the reality is, if you just look for all the weakest evidence, and if you look for the easiest way, and if you Google other people who've had to deal with the same arguments and have taken it down, so you Google, okay, why should guns be banned? Oh, here are all these arguments that people just use in the same recycled arguments. You can get a decent arguments that you can deploy without doing too much thinking after about a half hour, an hour's worth of research to really sit down and come up with good arguments based on the arguments that are actually being made from the other side, using their numbers, using how they perceive things. That'll take half a day, if not an entire day or two, depending on how serious you are about it. So you've improved your performance maybe double but you've taken 10 times longer. So I mean, it sucks, but I think we've had this discussion before. We had it with Marty. The human brain is built for efficiency, not for accuracy. It's to get as close to accurate as possible for the least amount of expenditure of time and energy possible. And that's interesting because once you realize that, you realize it really does suck trying to be accurate. But I mean, really accurate, accurate to a high degree. It's a law of diminishing returns. It sucks, but I tend to think it's worth it.
Yeah, that's why when I get actually interested in a topic, I'm very interested in what the opposing view is, because and I will point out that I grew up mostly in Wyoming. I grew up with guns. Hell, half the students at our high school had guns in their gun racks in their pickup trucks in the parking lot of the school. I was in Boy Scouts. We took our 22s and I have a marksmanship class. So I grew up with firearms. We hunted a lot. So I already had that kind of what is the problem with guns, and then when I came across the whole debate about it and started getting interested, I already had the bias of, well, guns aren't bad. I've grown up my whole life with guns. And so, I heard one person, make a whole bunch of arguments that I was just like, okay, that doesn't even sound right without researching anything. That doesn't sound right. So I got frustrated with a lot of the arguments on both sides, and it's like, okay, well, I'm going to go look at, what serious people who are arguing against gun ownership, private gun ownership, and what the gun advocates actually are wanting to say. What are the numbers they're using? What statistics are they using? Are they putting a spin on them, or are they using them deceptively? If they're not, is it actually the problem that they say it is?
Yeah, I know.
I think it just makes your position far more stable, and I've gone through now that I say that, I'm sure that this has happened, but I can't think of an example of it off the top of my head where I went in with a preconceived bias because it was just kind of the way things were. Introduction of wolves to Yellowstone. I went in with a preconceived bias that, yeah, they should be reintroduced. Human beings are the ones that wipe them out. They should bring them back. And then when I actually got in and started looking at them and saw a lot of the opposing side's arguments, they made some really damn good arguments about why we shouldn't spend the money to do this. And so that actually changed my mind. I don't think we should have spent the money to do that. There was clear evidence that they were making progress back through the Intermountain West to begin with, and it cost a hell of a lot of money to do it.
Yep.
And we look at the reports given, especially now that we've seen how things worked out, and you can go, well, it didn't seem to really matter that much with all this money that we spent in. We didn't get much for a return on it. So there was one area where, looking at somebody else's best arguments and researching their positions instead of, just trying to do an open, quote unquote, unbiased search for information on both sides, made it a lot easier, or at least made it more clear to me what the good arguments actually were. And of course, it did take me a while to figure out what a good argument was. So, that wasn't something I learned in school. They didn't teach critical thinking in my school district. They didn't teach formulation of argument or argumentation, or how to do good research. None of that stuff was ever taught in high school. I actually learned that from watching channels like this one, or like the Non Sequitur Show, or watching R and Raw, watching a lot of other YouTube videos where people were actually making arguments. And it took me a while to figure out. It's like I didn't know what epistemology was until I started having an interest, and the big interest is over whether evolution was true. And that's where it really got me started into looking into what makes a good argument. And so thanks for having programs like this that put forth not only just information, but actually make arguments about certain policies and what we should do.
Well, thank you. I sincerely appreciate that. I appreciate your support and the support of other patrons and people who've supported us in the past and the present. And so thank you all very much. I think that's a pretty good note to end on. I do have one little thing I'm going to end on. But before we do that, was there any other sort of parting words that anybody wanted to say before I think we wrap this up?
I had a question, but
Yeah.
I'll do my parting words first. Right.
Either or, and I probably won't be in the Discord later just because it's past midnight here, and there's a very long day tomorrow. We've got another show. That one is going to be on another interface that's actually done, so I don't think we'll have the same problems. But tomorrow we've got on Dr. Richard Carrier to discuss what religion was Hitler. There's a lot of contention over that. On some levels, I think it doesn't matter. On some levels, it's actually probably reasonably important. But and there's just a lot of people say he was an atheist, he was a Catholic, he was a what was he, and does it matter? So we're gonna be doing that tomorrow, and we've just got to reschedule Ozzy and Dr. Richard Carrier together. I think the first time they've ever streamed together, discussing philosophy of religions. Dr. Cy Gart is coming on to discuss with us what we now know about COVID. What are we looking at for overall numbers? What are we looking at for side effects that persist? What is the damage currently being done? And what can we expect now that we have lost significant access to data? Although we have, and we're going to be discussing this in the Discord, there are other places where we can get the data, but it's now a lot harder. There isn't like just a single consolidated place. It's quite as easy to get the data, but people are working on it. So let's try to wrap this up. So what was your question?
What would the feasibility be to get the COVID data with a FOIA request?
Oh,
Because it's information that we need.
I think because it's ongoing data, I think there might be a problem. Most of those requests have to be for a specific thing, and I don't know that something that's ongoing is usually considered like that. You could say get the request for all the data's up till today. Tomorrow you got to fill a new request, but so I'd be curious about that. I think the other thing is, at best, you'd get the raw data, which is extraordinarily difficult to sift through. The CDC had to do it every single day, and they were keeping it in real time. The White House isn't capable of it. They can't do it. So if you ended up getting the raw data, what I would do in that case is, if I really don't want you to see the data, I'd send you all of it. So I would, first of all, send it going back since we started collecting the data. I would send it without any index, without any, and I would just send you all the records we've ever collected on it. No index, no ability to know where the data is and where it's coming from. And also just the minutia, like what every single patient died of. So you'd have to find all the patients at a certain time, tally them up yourself to get the actual numbers. That's what I'd do. And you'd have the data, it would be legal, but you can't do anything with it. So I think it's a good start. I'd like to see someone do that, but there are issues with it. So what was your
all they would have to do is classify that document as a matter of national security, and even if they were allowed to get it through something like a Freedom of Information Act, all they're going to do is redact whatever they want to, specifically like the numbers of contractions a day and stuff. Easy peasy, and nobody has dead data anymore.
Well, courts, FISA courts are usually reasonably good about that kind of thing because they know that tactic and they know the government tries that with everything, and the government's had a hard time getting away with it. They can, but it's, I mean, I think it's, I'd like to see it tried. I don't know what's going to happen. I'd like to see it tried. Anyone else? Any other before I go with my parting words, which you're all just going to love this.
I've got a moral dilemma.
Okay, I love moral dilemmas. If you say pineapple on pizza, I'm going to kill you.
No. I have a severe case of PTSD, and one of my triggers has to do with objects near or around my face. Mm-hmm. So I can't wear a mask. With this, I've tried to justify it as this is kind of like me being immunocompromised with vaccines or something like that. Like, how do I resolve it with myself that masks just is not a thing I can do?
I think you have to try everything you can to see if you can do a mask, because psychological problems are
I have
invisible.
tried.
Let me finish. I know you have. I have zero doubt. Because psychological problem, I'm sort of discussing this in a general sense. Because psychological problems are invisible, we tend to think of them as anyone can conquer it and it's not a real problem. So if you keep trying harder, eventually you'll get to it. As long as you have satisfied yourself that you have genuinely done everything you can, the reality is sometimes these problems cannot be conquered. Sometimes they just fucking can't, and it's not your fault. So long as you've tried, and I believe you have. So I wasn't questioning whether. What I'm saying is, there is a bar, and there are people who don't meet that bar. There are people who are just like, oh God, I tried, but it's kind of hard to breathe with the things. No, you haven't really tried. But if you've really tried earnestly, and you can't, then you can't. And I think there are. This is a question for a medical ethicist, and I'd love to hear their answer. I'm going to take kind of a wild stab at the dark in this, but my answer is that we do have exceptions for most laws, and there are reasons. In this case, an exception, it's not about protecting you, of course. The mask is about protecting other people. So exceptions could be dangerous not to you, but to others. But nonetheless, we do recognize these things because you have to be able to leave your house too. So my suspicion would be to figure out what are the maximum other precautions that you could take, and then realizing that there has to be a compromise where you're probably just going to have to stay home more often than most people, but and the law doesn't allow for this, so this is really only a hypothetical right now. To the best of my knowledge, there aren't medical exemptions for this. There should be, but the medical exemptions should basically be if you have to leave because you kind of need to eat, you need to go to the grocery store, you have to take extra. You can't leave without sanitary wipes. You can't leave without wiping down surfaces near you as you pass them and without gloves. But if you follow these, this is a hypothetical example. I don't know. I'm tossing this shit out. But as long as you follow those, it's less safe than wearing a mask, but it's more safe than doing nothing, and it splits the difference between you being a prisoner in your house and you being able to do everything you could if you had a mask on, but you don't. But I think we have to acknowledge psychological problems, real psychological problems, are as limiting as any physical problem. They just are. Most physical problems, actually, in some way, I mean, look, I can create problems that are just in the brain by cutting off how your nerves communicate to your, and psychological problems are just miscommunications of nerves where you're triggering a fight or flight response when it shouldn't be triggering, but it is triggering, and it's real, and it doesn't matter that it's not the same thing as a broken bone. It is the same thing as a broken bone. Actually, it's the same fucking thing. So I think Tony here brings up a good design. I do think that you're going to have to make compromises and get other people to do the groceries as much as you can. But I also think it's impossible to say. Although actually, well, okay, Tony brings up a good point. So so obviously, like I said, I'm throwing out my wildest first guest answer. I mean, I think there are people, and actually, too, this is another thing. So maybe this is maybe I was probably too charitable in that because I think he brings up a good point. I'll bring up the other thing, which is there are people who are immunocompromised, who have been prisoners in their homes for 6 months. They're immunocompromised. There is no way. Yeah, you know what? I think probably. I'm sorry. I'm gonna go back on my answer. I think I'm probably going to suggest that Tony's probably closer to the right answer on this because there are people who are immunocompromised who can't leave their houses because if they get this, they die. And even if everybody's wearing a mask, it's not worth the risk. And if you go out without the mask, you could kill someone else. So it may be that as a result of a condition over which you have zero control, and everybody has to acknowledge that, and everybody has to acknowledge it's not your fault, and it's unfair. Life's unfair. Again, if you're immunocompromised, this is unfair. If you're immunocompromised, it's unfair that there are people going around without fucking masks on. Even if there were masks with everybody, you probably wouldn't leave. But there are also people who just... So, yeah, my guess is, and I wouldn't try to push it too much because there are people who have it this bad and there are people who have it worse. But yeah, so actually, midstream, as I'm doing my best to answer, and I'm thinking as I think yeah, I think that's probably the answer I'd lean on. I don't know if that helps, but I think the answer I'd lean on is, you know what, you're probably going to be stuck with you can't leave at all. Actually, now that I think about it, and again, it's like it needs a medical ethicist and it needs someone who knows the odds better than me. But I think probably Tony's right. And I mean that because there are very few fucking phrases I hate uttering more often than Tony's right. The good news is I don't have to say that very often. Anyways, I'm sorry. That's probably not good news, but I think that's probably the case. And again, it has to acknowledge it's terribly unfair, but this is unfair to everybody, and more so to some than others. But I think you probably deserve a chance to respond, but I think we do need to get going. Again, this is going to continue in the Discord. I won't be there, but anyone who wants to can go. It's 12:30. It's going to be a long day tomorrow, so I am going to need to get going. Was there anyone else who had any sort of last things they wanted to say? All right, I'm gonna take that as a no. So, God, I wish I was making this up. A swarm of flying ants stretched for miles over the UK and looked like rain on weather radar. You can add giant swarms of flying ants to your 2020 scary sounding insect bingo card, along murder hornets and hordes of noisy cicadas. The UK's Met Office shared radar imagery showing the ants flying over the southeast part of the country. It's not raining in London, but our radar says otherwise. Basically a several miles long swarm of flying ants, so big that it appears as rain on weather radar, has infested a stretch of the UK. I'm not fucking making that up. Thanks for watching, folks. That wasn't a joke. All right. To the Discord. You know what? I am going to drop into the Discord. I'm going to drop into the Discord for a few minutes. I hope we'll see you guys there. Thank you, all of you who put up with the considerable technical difficulties at the beginning. I sincerely apologize. We'll get on that. You've been patient with us. Like I said, we've switched from OBS, which is free software and spectacular, but to vMix, which is unfortunately a little more expensive, far more powerful, lets us do these hangs very much better, lets us have multiple people in multiple windows, but takes a lot longer to set up, and you have to set up separately for each show. And this being the show we do the least has been the one that's just sort of a little lagging behind. But we got it under control. Everybody was immensely patient, for which I thank you. And, let me, I'm actually going to, of course, and in the process of doing all of these things, I'm going to switch that over. So, let's see. And just because this process is switched over, it's a mess. Thank you all again, and I'll see you in the Discord in just a few minutes.